Hello, everyone. I get to have Sarah Dalton of Sarah Dalton's Cooking School here today, and she is going to be talking to me a little bit about just different approaches for cooking and food and the brilliant way that she thinks about food. And I got to meet her when I was on a really cool retreat, and she was able to cook for like a big group of people and make everything paleo and also make vegan meatballs for the vegans there. And she was able to cater to like a bunch of different food needs. So this is just an invaluable way of thinking to have access to, especially when we're thinking about alternatives or ways to still enjoy cooking and enjoy our lives while also realizing that we have to eat real food. We can't eat the fake food anymore. People think of this as like a diet. It's not really a diet, it's just cutting out poison. So let's figure out how to cook with real food and not poison. So thanks, Sarah. Thanks for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
So I guess one of the things I'd start out with, right, is what made you become a chef? Like what do you love about cooking? What brings you alive about what you do?
Thank you. That's a really good question, and it's a really long story. But to shorten it, I was in a relationship actually that was not healthy. And I started picking up cooking, and ultimately it was just sort of, something that was a distraction. That's how it started, truly. I had also really knew nothing about food, so we can go backward here a little bit. I grew up in Ohio, in Cincinnati, and my food options were like Applebee's.
Yeah, that Midwestern way of thinking about food is a little different sometimes.
Yeah. And I had actually ended up moving to Telluride, and I had a roommate who was a chef. And I had somebody who asked me to go to a dinner party. And we went shopping. And, he picked up something like, an artichoke. And I literally had never seen an artichoke. I was like, what is that? And my friend was like, what on earth are you talking about? What is that? It's an artichoke, And I'm like, I've never, he's got crab legs and all of these things that I just truly have never seen. And I started, getting really curious about it, and then watching my roommate cook and that kind of thing. And so it had started to be a curiosity. And then as I moved into, that relationship, I started getting more curious. And then I started actually just kind of teaching myself. And, I went straight into the cuisines that took a lot of work, building flavors, and just getting really curious about what that was like. So for example, Indian food, curries. I really started playing with those, and if I caramelize this onion, to this point, and I take it a little further, how does my flavor change, right? So I really just started playing with food. And then I had another roommate here in Denver that used to be a chef, and he was like, Sarah, if you're going to live here, you got to learn how to use these knives. So he started showing me that. So we started cooking together, and it just sort of started to expand, and people around me started seeing that it was kind of brightening my world, and started to support it.
Mm.
And all of a sudden, I mean, to be honest, I just started following that. And, here we are, me being the owner of Denver cooking classes. And, I still read nothing but cookbooks, and am always trying to push myself. My menus for my cooking classes are global. So I get to play with all kinds of different cuisines and flavors and that kind of thing. So I guess that's the long story short version of, cooking saved my life, saved my soul, and my spirit, and has also just, it's still exciting today as it was. I don't even know how long ago that was. 10, 15 years ago. Yeah.
I love that. I think
Yeah.
that is a great story. And it's like cooking can save you in so many ways. It's like, yes, it gave you this other hobby to work with, but it also gave you this way to like nurture yourself and put love into the things that you're putting into your body. And there's an energetic component to that, you know? So we digest our food very differently if we cook it and we spend time and art creating it versus like shoving it in our face while we're at a red light. So it's just very, it's very different.
Countertop kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I have like a basic list of questions, but you said something that I really liked where you're talking about building flavors.
Mm-hmm.
I would love to hear you kind of just expand on that and your thoughts around that. Like, what were some of the initial things you learned? What were some of the epiphanies that you had? Because, you know, most people, like, I don't want to tell them, you know, cook your broccoli for 3 minutes. Like, they can figure that out. I want to teach people how to work with flavor and think about how things evolve. And that way you're like not always following a recipe, you're following your intuition and your knowledge about food.
Yeah, and that's exactly actually what I try to teach when I'm doing my classes. You know, we don't pull recipes. I give them the recipes the next day. We're not.
Cool.
We're not
I
there
like
to.
that.
We're not. You don't pay me to stand over a recipe. You're paying me to learn how to smell your food, feel your food, touch your food, and see what it can do. So back when one of my first kitchen experiences was actually a group of guys that were all paleo. They were cooking paleo meals and delivering them. And I think, you know, one of the things that I learned with those guys was a lot about seasonal ingredients, but little basic things. I mean, literally how to cut things and how that could change. Very simple things like blanching. You know, like you mentioned broccoli, you blanch it and it's this beautiful bright green, and you shock it really quick and it stays that way. And so, you know, I kind of was just learning the basics, things like that, from literally knife cuts to blanching to boiling to braising and all of that. But when it comes to flavors, in Colorado, we have a really short, weird growing season. And so you have to kind of get it while you can. And one of my favorite times of the year is right now, end of summer. And you've got all these beautiful tomatoes, and herbs are huge and fresh and wonderful. And
all the squash.
Oh my God, and all the squash. And there's so many things you can do with squash. But, you know, I started playing with seasonal ingredients, really simple things like I would go to the farmer's market at the end and grab all the tomatoes I could, you know, the ones that they were getting ready to toss. And I literally just throw in some basil, a little bit of some almonds in there, some garlic, whatever, and roast them off, put them in a blender, and you've got a sauce. I mean, that simple, and it is the sexiest thing on earth. So really, it's what I was learning was letting the food speak for itself rather than needing to spend all of this time, you know, like overthinking it. You know, it's like, here's all these tomatoes, just what can they do? You roast them, they taste like this. You do it raw, it tastes like this. Add some, you know, basil to it. What grows together goes together, kind of thing.
Oh, I like that. That's a good way of thinking.
And so you can really make things shine that way. And so I think I started to learn, that you just don't need to spend hours and hours and hours overthinking this stuff. Just let it do whatever, you know.
If you had to list your let's go with your top 4 favorite flavor combinations, what would they be?
Ooh, that's fun. Gosh, I love tarragon and salmon.
Ooh, okay.
I love, tomatoes and basil. I mean, to be
classic.
But you know, I really like to do like pestos and chimichurris and things like that. You know, you had mentioned before sauces and stuff.
Yeah, let's dive right into that. It's perfect. So I had wanted to ask her about her favorite way to approach making sauces, because I think sauces are the key to making anything taste good, like literally anything, especially when it's totally bland. And there's different ways that you can make bases for sauces where you can like make something creamy, but it's technically Whole30. So like a classic thing that I do is I'll use some avocado oil or some olive oil, but olive oil is a little heavier, and some lemon and an egg and like a little bit of mustard. And it's a fantastic base cream sauce for a whole bunch of different stuff, everything from mayonnaise to I've used it in like a buffalo chicken dip. It's just like a good foundational thing. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on stuff like that.
Yeah, so I have a gazillion food sensitivities. So I've had to get pretty creative with how I eat.
Perfect. That's what this is about.
Yeah. But sauces, however, are a really great way to, you can make them, you can freeze them. Like for example, chimichurris and pestos. I mess with all kinds of different flavors. And you asked about combinations. I'll do mint and walnut pesto, or I don't know, gosh, tarragon, parsley. I mean, you can just mess with anything, but I'll pop them in an ice cube tray with parchment paper, right? So you can just pop that out and throw it into something, quickly, or, marinara sauces. You can play with those. Again, that we go back to that tomato and just roasting it off, or simmering just a really nice, good San Marzano tomato and a sauce in a can, throw an onion and some basil in there, freeze it. Stocks are a big one, and you can put all kinds of different flavors in there. Barbecue sauce. Because I can't have any dairy, I've been playing a lot with cashew bases, but you can make all of these things and have them in your freezer. And, when you don't have time, you thaw it out and over your zucchini noodles and some cashew cheese on top, and you're good to go. So I play with a lot of that kind of stuff. I do a lot of bone broth. I do a lot of intermittent fasting. So that's something I can pull out really quickly, thaw and sip on all day long. You've got all that delicious marrow in there. That's actually also a great substitute for butter. Very, very sexy thing. So, I do a lot of pestos and like tomato-based things. Again, cashew, curries, coconut milk is a staple.
Coconut cream is one of my favorite things.
Yeah. Yep. So you can play with that. If I do a piece of salmon, I might just do like a silken tofu and coconut with some bright green curry paste or something like that. That again doesn't have to be overthought.
I love it. So I know like when you were cooking at the retreat and stuff, like you kind of had a bit of time to plan and like think about what you were going to make a shopping list and stuff like that. But let's just say you had kind of like a last minute gig and you knew that they wanted to eat paleo, and you weren't totally sure what things were going to be like, and you were just at the grocery store and you were getting some hardcore staples for something like that. And you knew that, some of it you might be able to cook right after eating, and some of it you might have to save. And you were thinking about things that would, be okay saving in the fridge versus things that you might have to like cook later to have it taste fresh, but have it be quick. Just what would be going through your brain when you're going into that grocery store?
This is really funny because I actually had an entire menu planned for that retreat, and I think I 100% strayed away from it.
Well, you did great. It was freaking delicious. So I was very impressed with the mushroom meatballs.
Yeah, those are fun. But I didn't do hardly anything I think I sent that I was going to do.
Cool.
And it was getting a feel for the people around me. I don't know, just what was available. What I did have, my staples were, tomatoes, onions, garlic, nuts.
And I just want to put this out there for people. She was cooking for like people who eat meat, and cooking for vegans, and cooking for some non-dairy people and some dairy people and some no egg people and some egg people. So it's like she was able to use these staples to make multiple things to cater to multiple needs.
Yeah. So rice, and I know that's not considered paleo, but
yeah, it's okay.
Rice is a staple for me. I personally can't have gluten or anything like that, but I had that couscous salad. I saw tons of cucumbers and fresh herbs, and so it became cucumber, tomatoes, but with a beautiful piece of salmon, That was just a really
that was delicious. And I know, and for anyone who's not sure, couscous is a grain, so you just have to determine if you're sensitive to it or not. So it just depends.
and I miss it so much. I wanted to eat that so bad. The Israeli couscous, the big, beautiful ones, but
you could do something like quinoa and it'd be mildly similar.
yeah, or you can mix the two even, but but so that couscous was something then I pulled out the next day, and you can, just fry it up or whatever and turn it into something else, or add an egg, or put it in a wrap or something of that nature. So again, it's those sauces and things like that I can save for a day or two, and turn it into something else, which is what I did the entire time. It was like I can't quite remember what I made.
I think you made like ratatouille, you made the mushroom meatballs at one point, you made some African curry dish and salmon.
I did the peanut stew. Yeah.
Yeah.
So sweet potatoes, for example, I have those on hand all the time. I love to cook them off ahead of time. I heard a rumor that, and I'm not a dietitian by any means, but if you cook them, let them cool, and then reheat them, you're somehow getting
more fiber.
Prebiotics rather.
Yeah, that goes for rice and potatoes. If you let them cool, you get more prebiotics.
Exactly. So that's another thing you can do. But having the sweet potatoes on hand, I can do that African peanut stew. Then I have all these potatoes for lunch. I might do like a taco sweet potato, so ground beef, avocado, salsa, that kind of thing. If I had already made quinoa for something, toss that in there and your beef. And so it's that kind of thing, having things on hand and recreating something different. That's what I think I did most of the time.
Well, and when I think about saving stuff, I think about like it's much easier to save protein and starch. And then if you are wanting to make something quickly but fresh, it's usually pretty easy to whip up the veggies in like a minute or two, especially if you're like steaming them. Like broccoli should only be steamed for a couple minutes anyway. I'd say, the longest veggie you'll run into is probably squash or like Brussels sprouts, but even so, you just like toss it in the oven for 30, 40 minutes and you're done.
Yeah. So my habit there is, I'll go to the store and I will stock up. Costco, right, on beef. I kind of veer away from pork, but I love lamb, bison. If I can find elk, I will have that for sure on hand. Chicken, turkey, that kind of stuff, and I'll have all of that frozen that I can pull. But I might go to the store every day or 2 days. That's just me. I actually have a really strange obsession with going to the market. I love it.
I go anywhere from 1 to 4 times a week, depending. And it's nice. You get to like interact with people and they get to know you, and it becomes a social like watering hole thing that benefits you in other ways too.
Well, and you can see what's available too. And there's always the things that are starting to go bad. I grab those right up, because you can do all kinds of stuff with that or cook it right away. And I find that it can be at their prime, in that moment. But, I was just in San Diego and the farmers markets there are divine. And I up making the most amazing, just Creole style risotto, okra, corn. I made a corn stock. That's something that you can bring tons of flavor to a corn chowder. We're in season, right? So all the cobs in, poblanos, or, again, what grows together goes together, all those flavors right in the pot. And I did a risotto, but risotto, what most people start to think about is butter and cheese. No, vegetable stock. There's way more flavor in there. I love cashew butter, and you can just throw that in there. Oh my God, the okra was just mind blowing, But then the next day, I made this for some friends. The next day, they added a poached egg. Bam! Like they had dinner. I had a piece of salmon in there. on top of it. But that wasn't left, and there was a little left over. So sometimes you can just add an egg to something, and good Lord, I can't eat eggs either, but
It's okay, neither can I. And I know some of the people listening also can't. So it's like, but the reason I wanted to bring her on and talk about this stuff, right, is it's like different ways for you to think about things. Or like, I still, if I want something that has an egg and I can't have an egg, I'll usually just use like sausage or some other protein that still makes it almost feel breakfasty or whatever, and it's not. So it's like you can do stuff in a lot of different ways. So one of my other good questions for you was, what are some of your favorite substitutes to get creative with? So like, I know you used mushrooms to make meatballs, which I never would have thought of. And I use spaghetti squash all the time as like a pasta foundation so that I can do different sauces and meats and veggies that I like in a pasta style, but it's basically just a vegetable dish. So just like substitutes and alternatives for when you're trying to eat healthy that still make things fun.
yeah, gosh, that's a good question, and a tough one for me because food can be challenging at times. But and maybe some people that are listening to this can relate to that. But again, my favorite substitute for a lot of things is always going to be cashew. If I'm craving cheese, I can make a cashew cheese in 10 minutes, and kind of feel like I've had my fix. You soak it in water, add some lemon. You can add herbs, salt, pepper,
Yeah, wait, can you give us a super quick tutorial on how to make cashew cheese in 10 minutes?
Yeah. Again, I soak the cashews until they're like soft. 10 minutes, usually a little bit of lemon juice, salt, and I throw that in a blender. That's it. And
Wow.
you can mess with the consistency or the texture. You can add a little oil if you wanted to do avocado or even sesame, or you can change those oils to change the flavors to what you're doing. But today I'm making a bolognese. It's one of my favorite comfort foods, and I love to have cheese on top of that. Parm, but I can't do it. So I'll soak some cashews and blend it up to get the texture that I like and put it right on top. You can, like I said, throw some herbs in there. So it's really that easy. Again, veggie stocks, bone broth, beef bone broth is, when I do my bolognese, typically I'll do my meat on one pan and my vegetables on the other. The vegetables simmer in wine, the meat will simmer in a milk. I use almond milk. I love the flavor that makes. But typically they'll use milk or cream. Can't do that. But I'm omitting the wine and simmering those vegetables in that bone broth. Oh my God.
That sounds great.
It's crazy when you put that together. And then polenta instead of the pasta is a really nice, you can make it in a pot and have it sort of, like that, or you can actually roll it and chill it and cut it and pan fry it. So things like that. Gosh, what else do I substitute? That's just such a good question. I've done banana as a base for curry. I had actually seen another chef do that, and it was brilliant. Or plantain. Yeah. So fruit can sometimes, but I personally can't eat most fruit either. So that's not a part of my world. Man, all these answers are going to come later, and I'm going to be like, oh my God, this.
That's okay. Send them to me and I will add them to the group and to the post and everything. So, because I know I'm kind of surprising you with questions, but I like what's like coming out, right? Because I like to play like your comment about like flavors earlier. It's like it's way better to get those answers than just my pre-prepared stuff. So,
I think really what it comes down to is truly trying to cook seasonally. It's so important. That's what it's there for. you know, as we move. And I said, oh my God, this is my favorite time of the year to cook. But as soon as fall comes around, I'm like, oh my God, this is my favorite time of year to cook. And that actually brings me to another great substitute, which is pumpkin. Canned pumpkin is always in my cabinet. It's a
How do
great.
you like to use it?
So, you know, we do a gnocchi in my Italy class, but it's actually ricotta and eggs and flour. That's the base of it. But if you can't do all that, you can do pumpkin and gluten-free flour or sweet potato. Great substitute for things like that. So you still
Cool.
have that like decadent feeling, right?
Well, and like that's what we're craving most of the time, right? It's like, yes, to a point, like we're craving those foods, but mostly we're craving like feeling fancy or feeling like we're making nice Italian food or something like that. So just figuring out how to still have the ceremony is the important part.
For sure. And for a while there, when I found out that I could no longer have gluten and I could no longer have cheese, good Lord, like as a chef, and I do so many cheese plates and I just, you know, would always snack on that cheese. And that's the hardest thing for me right now is like, oh my God, I can't do that. So in the beginning, you feel like you're missing out. And the truth is you're not. It's a wonderful opportunity to get creative, but truly, again, to tap into what's available and what's seasonal. And again, like you don't have to overthink it. You let that speak for itself. I mean,
Well, and just reframing the way we think about things.
Yeah, I love to do like a mashed potato, but turnips. It's the most delicious thing on earth. Are you kidding me? Way better. And you
I
throw
like
some
that.
butter and some chives in there. And, you know, again, you said that kind of that ceremony or that ritual or, you know, there's a real thing like FOMO and fear of missing out. But you just, you don't have to. And when you think about, you know, a turnip in the fall versus, you know, just one of those white potatoes, you're going to digest it better. And again, you don't have to do all these crazy things to it. You boil them and you mash them. Done. And it's freaking decadent. You know, so learning that I'm not missing out and just by eating what's in season, like again, pumpkin, we're going to start rolling into that pretty soon. And then I get really excited. And then spring comes and we have mushrooms and peas and all the herbs that come up, you know, that's when the tarragon's crazy and the chives and oh my God.
So this is perfect. This is perfect. Thank you so much. Because like this is what I wanted to teach people about is that like you have so many options and it's more like you're not missing out, you're brainwashed by society. And so it's like that's really what it is. It's just no one ever taught you how to cook with normal food and like real food.
And a lot of us are, I think, you know, and I'll speak for myself, are raised, again, I was raised in Cincinnati, Ohio, but I was also raised by people who were raised by people who are in a depression. My mom there's 4 of us just in my immediate family growing up. She wasn't cooking to like please us. She was cooking to get shit on the table.
Yes.
You know what that meant? It meant a lot of canned stuff that really, you know, some canned things are great. Not, you know, God, canned asparagus. Who does that? Sorry, Mom, but terrible, you know, and not healthful. But like it was really a matter of quantity, not quality, right? Like just get this out. And I
think that's a really realistic thing.
People today are still that way and of that mindset, you know, and sheet tray meals are really great because you just, like you said, you go get those fresh vegetables, you put them in. One of my favorite things in the fall is just the end of summer, like zucchini, squash, cauliflower, broccoli, some garlic in there, olive oil, salt and pepper. It is the most delicious side. All you have to do is add a piece of protein to it. And you've got yourself a really beautiful, seasonal, accessible, easy, quick meal. I don't know, and I feel really happy about that. But you know, just we were all raised with those parents who just had the scarcity mentality, and we have to get out of that way of thinking and remember that there is abundance everywhere you look. From CSAs to having our own garden right out outside. It's possible. We've got hydroponics now. You can do it in your kitchen, little tomatoes and again, those herbs that you add to something that can just really pep up a dish,
And that can be in like a windowsill in like a tiny little pot.
100%. Yeah. Yeah. So
Cool.
getting out of that scarcity mentality and into just what's available. And then, you move into winter and we might I'll eat a lot more kimchi stew when that happens.
Ooh.
And so thinking about that too, how we store our food and pickling and all of that kind of stuff. That's also a fun summer project that you can pour in the winter.
We'll have to do like one of these each season. That would be really fun. So
it would be, yeah, because you'll get me really excited about.
Perfect. All right. Well, we'll touch back on the stew idea because I like that, because then that's really, I guess, like as we kind of wind down, there's I guess two other kind of questions, and one of them was like, how do you think about cooking for yourself versus a group or like a family? Because sometimes it's easier to cook for yourself and sometimes it's almost harder. But I know like when you were cooking for the group, you did a lot of like stews or like the ratatouille, and then it's way easier to serve in large portions. So let's go with that. And then my kind of last question will be like, is there anything you would not cook with and why? I know that's a bigger question. We can come to that next.
Yeah, I'm thinking about both of those things. When I'm teaching, most people always say like I never cook for myself because portion wise I make the whole box of spaghetti and I can feed an army, and just kind of not understanding that. But gosh, again, I mean, I'm going to make a bolognese today and I could probably feed an army, but ultimately it's because I'm going to put it in the freezer. When I want my comfort food, I can just pull that out. So I might still cook that way for myself as I would for a group, to be honest. When I cooked for you guys, yeah, I did do those bigger stews that could be reused the next day in a kind of a different form. But yeah, I'll do the same thing here. Now, to be perfectly honest, most of us chefs are used to just standing over the counter and eating really quickly. Especially when I was working on the line, it was like you had family meal and you had 20 minutes to get it down. So that's something that's actually much different for me. For me, it's like trying to sit down and be mindful and meditative even. If I have a salad, I'm trying really hard to sit down and really, but yeah, to answer your question, I think I still do big things that I can kind of put aside. And I think what I was going to say was when I was cooking for you guys, I still went to the store every single day.
Okay.
I got fresh stuff to add to it. So yeah, I like to make big things and freeze them and pull them out later.
Well, I do the same thing. Like I'll cook my bone broth for the week and I usually do it with the chicken, and then I end up with an entire chicken's worth of meat. And then I freeze half of it and I keep half of it in the fridge, and I just have like shredded chicken to add to my spaghetti squash or to my salad or to my sandwich
all the things. Yeah. My neighbor wrote me yesterday and she said, Sarah, I'm making this bone broth with chicken and I don't know what to do with all the chicken. Does your cat want it? And I was like, my cat actually can't eat chicken because it's bad for their ears. And I'm like, and I told her, I said, oh, but you could keep it and do like a Thai style lettuce wrap. You can put it in a pasta primavera.
Sometimes I'll use like kelp noodles and bone broth and a bunch of fresh veggies, and I'll make myself a homemade pho. Yum. And it's really good.
Boom. Yeah, there you go. You get some cloves in there and that kind of thing. Yeah, I really do bigger things. I love to make green chili.
One of my favorites too. Yeah.
The best. But
I eat that for breakfast. For some reason, that's a really good breakfast thing because we like it on our eggs and our burritos and stuff, right? So why can't I just cut out the egg and the flour tortilla and I'll just have the green chili with a bunch of chicken and lentils and hearty things.
It's my favorite fall breakfast.
Yeah.
Green chili, a big yummy bowl of it. I'll make like pozole. keep the hominy separate and just have the
Hmm.
solely broth, freeze it, throw it over some hominy, boom, you've got a meal. So I cook mostly that way for myself, or try to eat salad. Sometimes when I want to snack, in the summertime I love zucchini roasted, or tossed in a little cornmeal and air fried for fries. When I have those cravings, um, like that. But yeah, again, it's about making stuff to freeze, and then you just have your protein and your fresh herb.
Well, and I feel like with the timeline that you've done this on, it's like it's a slow progression, right? Like we slowly learn how to do this over time. And then you get to the point where you're like, oh, I can air fry this vegetable and satisfy the craving I have for junk food.
Yeah.
But you're like eating a vegetable. So it's learning how to like retrain your psychology around things and retrain yourself on what your cheats are and figuring out how to make things sustainable and how they can have longevity and how you won't get bored or sick of them. So that's why I love this creativity.
Another
Um,
thing is that most of us know, that you asked about substitutions just while it's here, is cauliflower.
yeah, yeah.
When you
Oh
said junk
yes.
food, I'm like, one of the things I miss the most about not being able to eat gluten and dairy is pizza.
Hmm.
And I'm actually trying to master a cornmeal crust.
Hmm.
With that,
Cauliflower crust, which I think you're mentioning, is one of my favorites.
yeah. And some of us can have a hard time with the cauliflower. So I have to do it in small amounts, which is why I'm doing the working on the cornmeal. But then you make that cashew cheese. Oh God, you got a pizza.
Well, and sometimes I'll go to like Mod Pizza, which is like the Qdoba version of pizza where they'll make you a pizza, right? Now,
Yeah.
their cauliflower crust, I recently learned, has dairy in it as a binder. So remember, as you're getting these
Typically
substitutes, it's like,
Parmesan and eggs.
yeah, it's like sometimes they have stuff in there, but it's like a small enough amount that my body does okay with it. I still consider this a cheat meal, but I'll go there and I'll get the cauliflower crust and I'll get the sauce. And then I just load it with veggies and protein. I don't even do cheese. They have a
No,
dairy free cheese, but you don't even need it. I just
you
need a transporting thing to transport the deliciously roasted vegetables and tomato flavor into my mouth. And I'll do
yeah.
like a bunch of olives and artichokes, and I have them do basil and arugula and peppers and onions and like whole garlic cloves. And it's like it makes this delicious kind of supreme everything style pizza,
You don't
and
miss
but
the
it's
cheese
pretty
at all.
healthy.
Yeah, you don't. I actually love Marco's coal-fired pizza. They do a gluten-free crust, and I mean, that man has his crust mastered, both gluten and gluten-free. But I'll get, and I'm a meat eater, sausage, pepperoni, red onion, and they fill it, and it's like the one with the cheese is gross in comparison. You
Yep.
know, this is, like you said, it's a vessel to get all that
Well,
good stuff in there.
and as we talk about these things, it's like, I still try to be intelligent about where I'm getting my meat from. So if I can make my own pizza and I can go get pepperoni that I know is like uncured and doesn't have hormones and antibiotics and all the crap in it, I'm going to try to do that. But, like sometimes when I'm out, like I enjoy myself, but I consciously know what I'm doing. So then after I do that, I'm like, okay, maybe I'll just eat a little bit better the next few days. So that kind of thing.
It's okay too, because again, there's that, you know, scarcity mindset that you have to get out of, and you got to give yourself a break.
Yeah,
I
totally.
do. If I give myself a break, I'm usually pretty miserable. So I really, for me, it's just about, you know, learning what doesn't hurt, and being really thankful that I can get that food into my body. Now, what I wouldn't cook with,
Yeah.
I don't know. I honestly don't.
Like vegetable oil. And why?
Yeah. Um, well, the only thing that keeps coming to my mind is black olives, and that's just because I think they're disgusting.
Okay, fair
Like
enough.
green olives and Kalamata olives I love, but like, ugh, black olives are gnarly to me, and so you will never see that in any. I've before had a Caesar salad where they put black olives on it, and I was like, I can't even. Ugh. That's your answer, black
Okay.
olive. But I know you wanted I know what you're looking for is like but I do cook with that sometimes with the oil. Um, Again, that's where that's your cheat. I think there's room to cheat with most stuff, but not black olives for me.
Well, fair enough. It's like we all have our things, right? I put black olives on my pizza, but that's pretty much the only place I'll put them. Um, cool. So yeah, I guess I don't know. I think from how she's approaching it, it's kind of like you can always use something in some way. It's just figuring out about what they go with is probably what they grow with, as she put it, which I think was a really good way to think about things.
It is, and that doesn't always have to be the case either. I mean, we can combine all kinds of things. There's a book, the Flavor Bible, and it talks about all kinds of really interesting combinations and things like that can be pretty mind blowing. So it's also okay to experiment, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But if it's fresh and it's in season, it's probably gonna work.
I love that. So and I know you do like a variety of things with your cooking school, and sometimes you have online classes. Like, what's some of the stuff you offer for people if they wanted to learn how to cook more or be more creative or work with you or stuff like that?
So Denver Cooking Classes is an in-home. I don't really ever know what to call it, but we've been around now for a little 3.5 years, and things always evolve, and you always have to kind of be open to that. But what's been working is, like I said, global menus. Now, this is another really kind of good answer to some of your questions when people are kind of lost. You can think in terms of countries and things like that. I just have this chicken. Well, what would you do in Thailand with your chicken, or in India, right? So you got your tikka masala, or you've got your pad thai, or so we teach menus like that. Right now we're teaching India, Thailand, China, Japan, Mexico, Italy, Spain, and I know I'm missing one. There's an 8th, but I can't remember what it is. But we're also working on a plant-based menu for those of whom, something like this, for example. But you pick that, you sign up, you pick myself or one of our chefs comes to your house for 2.5, 3 hours, brings all the equipment, all the ingredients, the best that we can find, and we teach you, again, without recipes until the next day. We show you how to put 3 dishes rather together. And that are seasonal. So they change just a little bit. Italy, come fall, we'll start incorporating that pumpkin into our gnocchi, and maybe more sausage and sage. Right now in summer, it's blistered tomatoes and basil. And then we just do a couple of different dishes like that. So we're still doing things seasonally. We're kind of starting to move out of the country and more into, again, the seasonal cooking, because I'm really trying to push that all around. But it can be, from France, without saying French, I guess, is, ratatouille. That is the ultimate end of summer delicious dish. But we might do mussels. But we might change what the broth looks like each season, right? We might get into like a heartier tomato thing in the winter time, and more herbs and things like that in the spring. So again, I mean, that's what we're doing. We do corporate events as well, and those look a little bit different because it's like we teach 30 people at a time. So we're doing like Thai spring rolls, and we're cooking the rest. You guys get that to deal with, but you still get to learn knife cuts. So we talk a lot about safety, a lot about communication, not being scared of your knife. So we cover quite a bit in those classes. To not be afraid, to not overthink. You'd be surprised how many people have a really hard time just using the knife, and that's important, obviously, to know how to do that. So that's one of the first things we talk about. We talk about what your favorite thing to cook is, or maybe your favorite memory, and bringing people back into the kitchen ultimately, and not overthinking and not being afraid, and experimenting, trying something new. And it's really beautiful to leave. We have nothing but 5-star reviews all around for 3.5 years in business. And there's reason for it, because people get to look down at something they've never done before and see how freaking simple, we keep our menus really, really basic, but it's crazy how delicious it is. And they're like, oh my God, I just made this 3-course meal in 2 hours, actually an hour and a half. And it's decadent and divine and delicious. And I have leftovers, and I'll tell them what they can do with their leftovers, and they're just pumped, so.
Well, I love that. That's fantastic, right? I think I think our society has made things overly complicated. So people think that cooking is like really hard and takes a lot of ingredients and a lot of steps, when really, like, if you're cooking good food that's like actually really tasty, you're usually using like under 6 ingredients for the most part, like on average-ish.
I feel like if you're using more, you're kind of, you're overthinking it, you're doing it wrong. It's like, you just, again, that's back to that food speaking for itself. We don't have to have all that stuff. Again, my tomato sauce is tomatoes and basil and garlic, and I do like to put some almonds in there for some sustenance. That's it.
Well, and as you start to eat like this, and your body basically stops being addicted to chemicals that are in not real food, your taste buds change and your flavor comes back and your sense of smell comes back. And then all these foods that she's talking about, their natural aromatic flavors actually taste better because you can taste them, because your taste buds aren't numbed by chemicals. So it's like, as you start to eat this way, it actually tastes better and better and better as you go. So
you actually understand your food a little bit more, understanding the food and what it's doing for us really does start right there in your mouth, in the mouth feel and things like that. Food is so fun and amazing, and sustenance and necessary, and
it's nourishing, right? Like, and that's how we can start to look at it. It's like this, it's this form of self-care. It's like a form of self-respect to give a little bit of time to do this stuff. And it doesn't have to be like a huge amount of time. With the stuff that she and I are talking about, like, you can save it in the fridge. I can make myself a bowl of spaghetti squash in like 2 minutes because I just have the stuff prepped, and then it's just really easy. And then I can make some delicious vegan Alfredo sauce spaghetti squash with chicken and broccolini, and it like literally takes me less than 5 minutes. So there's just lots of ways to do this stuff, but this was perfect. And I know you have stuff to do. So thank you so much for taking the time to do this. If people wanted to learn more about you or work with you, or like, and I have some people that listen who are out of state. Do you ever offer that type of cooking class for someone just over Zoom or something like that?
We were doing it over COVID, and it was really fun. I haven't really nailed that down cost wise. A lot of people are doing it where they send ingredients to the client. I send a shopping list, and then maybe it's an hour of your time. But people were kind of saying, hey Sarah, I just want to learn a shepherd's pie, and I'm like, cool, let's do it. Like, that sounds great. Or Sarah, I just want to learn how to break down a chicken. Now that was really tough to show somebody on a Zoom, so I can't do that. That was too much. But like showing you how to make a shepherd's pie, or showing you how to do a vegan meal, absolutely
cool.
Open to that. Otherwise, my website is denvercookingclasses.com.
Okay.
The best way to find me, and my email is sarah@denvercookingclasses.com. So we are going to be launching a plant-based in-home menu here very soon, launching kind of all kinds of new changes, and as we're rolling into the end of summer, beginning of fall, all of those menus are going to change just a little bit. So anything that anybody needs.
So that was denvercookingclasses.com, and then your email is just Sarah, SARAH @denvercookingclasses.com.
You got it.
Perfect.
Got lucky to nail that one down.
Yeah, good work. Well, thank you so much for taking a little bit of time to do this. I think it's going to be really useful to a lot of people. And if you guys want to learn more, I highly recommend reaching out to her. This is why I brought her on, is because it's like, when I work with people, most people know what they're supposed to do. They just don't know how to cook it. and they just don't know how to think effectively around this stuff. And that's, I think, the thing that takes the longest when you're changing your lifestyle. So if you can have a friend and someone to guide you, you can like rapidly speed that process up.
I think the theme is really to stop thinking about it so much. Truly, you know, we really get ourselves like kind of screwed up and overwhelmed when we're just trying to think about this too much. Just, you know, don't think about it so much. Just experiment, have fun. Like you said, it's just meant to sustain and be nourishing, and it can be all kinds of whatever you want it to be. Truly.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. And I'll look forward to the next time we get to chat about this stuff.
Totally. Yeah, this was fun. Now I'm starving. So.
We'll go make something delicious.
Bolognese, baby. It's gonna sit on here on my stove all day long. It's gonna be wonderful.
Perfect. Well,
all right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.